No one knows exactly how or when coffee was discovered, but there are many legends which, although may not be completely true, give us some idea of what happened. Most stories have the same basic idea. A Yemenite traveler in Ethiopia discovers that animals which eat the berries from a certain tree are abnormally active, so he decides to try the berries himself, and by one way or another ends up roasting and then boiling the seeds, to finally brew the first coffee ever. He then gets a super cool high and goes on to tell everyone about it. When people try this new drink, they love it and go on to make him a saint. Today, we may find this to be a little of an exaggeration, but consider that this was the 10th century, and people really didn't know much about drugs or where their effects came from. For these reasons, it is easy to imagine why Yemenite Sufi monks believed coffee to be such a mystical drink. But how did coffee went from being a drink only Sufi monks drank to being one of the most popular drinks in the world? Well, coffee houses. By the year 1414, coffee was not only popular in homes, but also in the many public coffee houses around the holy city of Mecca. Not only did patrons drink coffee and engage in conversation, but they also listened to music, watched performers, and played chess in the coffee houses. And with thousands of pilgrims visiting the city of Mecca each year from all over the world, it wasn't long before coffee went viral. Soon, coffee houses started to appear in other big cities like Cairo and Aleppo, and then in Istanbul, which at the time was the capital of the Ottoman Empire. By the beginning of the 16th century, coffee was so popular that when the conservative Orthodox imams of Mecca tried to forbid it, the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman I overturned their prohibition and made consumption of coffee and coffee houses legal again. By the 17th century, coffee had made its way to Europe, but it wasn't well accepted at first. People were afraid, and some went as far as calling it the bitter invention of Satan. The local clergy even condemned coffee when it came to Venice in 1615. The controversy was so great that Pope Clement VIII decided to taste the beverage for himself, and he liked it so much that he gave it papal approval. Despite such problems, coffee houses quickly became centers of social activity and communication in countries like England, Austria, France, Germany, and Holland. By the mid-17th century, there were over 300 coffee houses in London alone. In England, penny universities sprang up, which got their name because for the price of a penny one could purchase a cup of coffee. Soon, coffee began to replace the common breakfast drinks like beer and wine, which at the time were consumed even more than regular water. Not surprisingly, the quality and quantity of work greatly improved. It is also hard to ignore the fact that it was almost at the exact same time that coffee became popular in Europe that the Age of Enlightenment took place. It was also around this time when coffee was brought to New Amsterdam, later called New York by the British. But there was one major problem. Coffee was only being grown in Arabia, and the costs of importing it to America were incredibly high. So, in 1723, a French naval officer, Gabriel Declieux, obtained a seedling from the king's plant and managed to transport it safely to the small island of Martinique. This seedling is thought to be the parent of all coffee trees in America. In 1773, after the heavy tax on tea was imposed by King George III and the Tea Party was created, Americans decided that coffee was the way to go, and by the end of the 18th century, coffee became one of the world's most popular and profitable drinks.